Well, let's get started. I'm Aaron Burnett, CEO of Wheelhouse Digital Marketing Group. We are performance marketers for privacy first industries. On the right-hand side of, if you go back to the last slide, Chelsea, thanks. On the right-hand side, you can see an example of some of the clients that we've worked with over our nearly 15 years in business. We've worked in healthcare and med tech for a dozen of those years, working with some of the largest and most interesting and innovative brands around, including NASA, Providence, Aegis Living, Insulet, which has Omnipod and Delta Dental. From a service perspective, we provide digital strategy, digital advertising, marketing sciences, and creative and design services, and use our own proprietary technology to unlock exceptional performance for our clients by solving, in most instances, their toughest digital challenges. But that's not why you're here. You're here to listen to the fantastic Chelsea Keller. Chelsea is a senior digital advertising manager at Wheelhouse. She's worked for nearly a decade in digital marketing. She manages our largest client budgets and our most complex client relationships, and in many instances has worked with clients and grown their budget and their performance from thousands of dollars a month to millions and millions of dollars a month. So you're in exceptionally good and expert hands today as we look at the way that creative truly has become the new targeting and the new means by which digital advertising managers optimize campaigns. Chelsea, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Aaron. And hello, everyone. Welcome to a Wheelhouse webinar. I'm very excited to have you. So let me start with the big question. Why are we here? We are here because when we look at the auction and determining an ad winning an auction, it finds that there's a 49% of the incremental sales are related to creative. And that's when we compare it to brand, targeting, reach, and recency. So it is all about creative. There's another big reason that we're here, and that's because AI has exploded. So it has really morphed how ads not only are created, but how they serve. And there's been so much that has changed, and at such a rapid pace that we want to share with you what we've learned so far. And creative targeting matters. We're here to emphasize the importance of shifting your business mindset on how creative is used and valued in digital marketing, understanding that this is now how we cultivate audiences. Creative targeting matters because it deepens that audience engagement. It also improves cost efficiency by improving your engagement rates. We can see that it's not going to be impacted by any changes in audience targeting policies because we are leveraging creative as the new targeting. And it reduces ad fatigue, driving engagement and re-engagement of your core audiences. What are we going to learn today? A whole lot. We're going to start with talking about how did we get here, the evolution of the digital landscape. We'll talk about how platforms use AI for optimization and auction decisions. We'll also discuss how to improve reach and relevancy through creative diversification. How generative AI can help alleviate the rise in creative demands that you have on your business, and what to expect without implementing that diversification by looking at ad fatigue and costs. And knowing that we're all here to look toward the future, we'll touch on relevant trends, and we'll leave you with an action plan to come away knowing what to do after we end here today. And there will be a section at the end to be able to ask questions and get some answers. Okay. So let's start with, how did healthcare marketing get so tricky? And bear with me, as there are two timelines that I want to walk you through around the evolution of the digital landscape. One of them relates to audiences, and the other relates to creative. So in 2018, 2019, we really see a large shift in protecting users' rights by deciding to opt in or out of data. And that's through GDPR and California Consumer Privacy Act in California, our first stateside opt-in policy. And this was the first instances where we see what we are very familiar with today, which is that cookie pop-up button at the bottom of every browser page you see now. What this did, along with Safari and Firefox also limiting third-party cookies in their browsers, across these different policies, what it's done is created really strict policy adherence, making sure that you are not collecting or using any data that was not approved to use by the user. So ultimately, that led to reduced audience sizes that we have available for targeting and shifts from less third-party audience reliance and puts first-party data, more important as we start to shift towards that. By 2020, we had the pandemic, which really increased sensitivity on not just how we're talking and messaging health-related ads, but also how personal health information is handled. So in 2021, Apple said, hold my beer. We have a plan for this. And that is to limit the amount of data that is being shared. So in 2021, iOS released their 14.5 update, which had what is called ATT, their App Tracking Transparency. What this did was forced any user who had an iPhone and they downloaded an app, say a Facebook app, you then had to agree or disagree on allowing them to collect information, collect your data in order to serve ads that are most relevant to you. Similar kind of impact as we saw in 2018, 2019 with GDPR, where we are really seeing such a limited ability to target niche audiences. There was a lot of behavior that was lost across being able to trace a user from an app to a browser and back. So a lot of multi-touch attribution became really difficult. As you can imagine as well, the size of mobile audiences really shrank. Once again, more shift towards, hey, you got to use your first party data. And so a lot of businesses really saw the impact of this in rising cost per acquisition. Then by 2022, healthcare in particular and other sensitive verticals, such as credit and housing, really had to think outside of the box because Meta took away a lot of niche audiences that were under interest list audiences that were health specific, so condition specific. Once we lost the ability to use those, we lost the relevancy of our highest relevant audiences. And so we saw a significant loss in our KPI efficiencies. And then there was a shift towards broader targeting. And then over the last 2 years, we've heard rumors and back and forth. Google may or may not deprecate third-party cookies. Regardless of if they do or do not, marketers should shift priority towards first-party data strategies. Let's talk about creative, because that's also drastically changed over 5 years. In 2019, very browser focused, focusing more on images and carousels in your media mix. But by 2020, again, there was this huge shift in not just how we approach marketing with a softer, more value-based tone to it than a hard and fast selling point. In addition to that, there was just a huge boom in online commerce, e-commerce. So what that led to is really a user experience needs to have been improved to have a really frictionless and simple way for users to reach you. By 2022, short-form user-generated content catapults our online engagement, really snackable format that people love. And that helped shift towards a mobile-first strategy and a lot of the platforms that we see. And so AI models are starting to optimize creative, more dynamically combining different text options, different image options, which we'll talk about today, all to drive towards the highest likely engagement per user. Okay. And then over the last 2 years, Reels, TikTok, short form user-generated content, it is reigning supreme. It's not going anywhere. So using this as part of a diverse creative set is really the way that we are going to reach audiences when we're forced to be in such a broad space. So we've also seen AI start to come into play to help with some efficiencies in that creative generation around copywriting, image and video generation. So there are tools out there that we're going to talk about. So of those two timelines, there are three challenges healthcare marketers in particular face. The first, inability to reach the most relevant high-value audiences. Secondly, we're forced to cast such a wider net, a much broader audience, and this really can lend itself to a lower conversion rate. The ad platforms say, well, you can improve your conversion rate with more creative, but you have to prioritize and resource it as a business. So that's what we want to talk to you about today, prioritizing creative, because let me tell you what the ad platforms are prioritizing. We see AI-based campaigns like this Google Performance Max, which came onto the scene last year, where it combines a variety of assets. You'll see 15 headlines, 20 images, 5 videos, where it's going to dynamically combine those for maximizing not just your reach, but the personalization. And we see that when we use different products like this, Wheelhouse clients in particular have experienced twice as high conversion rate when using Performance Max when we compare it to just using a non-brand search campaign, because we're able to get a variety of different combinations across multiple placements, including search, shopping, email, discovery, and video. We also see that AI is coming into play in Meta with their Advantage Plus campaigns. The Advantage Plus campaigns use this visual here, which is called Meta Lattice. They introduced it last year, and it is an algorithm with a language learning model that continues to learn in order to optimize, rank, and discover new audiences for you with the different inputs that you're providing. And so this is how the personalization is happening on the back end. How are they deciding, though, what creative is going to resonate with the best audience? Well, they have been working on tools to understand how what is part of the anatomy of your ad. So let me show you this really cool ability that they are unrolling as we go, because this is how they are going to assess and score your creative when they're in auction. Currently, they're able to assess mechanical features, which you see in blue. This is your formats, your static versus video, your aspect ratios. Is it a 1:1? Is it a 9:16? The next thing that they're looking to do is for visual and copy features, being able to identify those. You know, is there branding with a logo? What scene is there? Is there a text overlay? And then eventually getting to a point of being able to look at thematic features, emotions, tone, motivation. What is it that is calling most to the user in this ad? So knowing that AI is going to be playing an even larger part in the success of your ads and the visibility of your ads, making sure that they are considering these diverse AI factors is going to be key to having successful creative in 2025. Well, great. How do you diversify your creative? So let's break those three different features down. Diverse creative should have a solid rotation of different formats and ratios so that you can maximize being in multiple placements. As I mentioned, these are the mechanical features that they're able to assess right now. You'll see we've got video and image, 9:16s and 1:1s as the examples on the right. Some of the best practices that we do see is that you should have at least 6 different placements that your ads are able to run in within a single ad group. You should also have a mix of image and video, and those videos should be 15 seconds or shorter. We find success when there's a 30 to 70 split between image and video. And then one just special note from me, 1:1s run on desktop and mobile. 4:5s are just for mobile only. So while they both are rather similar in their shape, know that there is a difference in where they serve. So I do recommend you make both, but if you can only prioritize one, I do recommend prioritizing a 1:1 so you can maximize your placements. Creative should have a diverse rotation of concepts. Here we're looking at CeraVe. They have a variety of different concepts where you've got a claim with a before and after on this top left. There's one that's a product close-up that's talking about waterproof. and they're using a mango color compared to the blue that they use in the other ads. They have a dermatologist, user-generated content going over the benefits. And the last example here, doing a close-up, looking at all skin types. So the best practices that we recommend here have a blend of both polished product ads, polished lifestyle or human-featured ads, and user-generated content. And don't be afraid to use a mix of colors and settings, because that is what's going to help determine different tones. And lastly, these kind of thematic features should have a variety. Some examples seen here, again, using CeraVe. We've got pediatrics, summertime, a personal routine, a dermatologist point of view, user-generated content, a testimonial going out, getting ready for date night, user-generated content. So just having a variety of impact factors that could reach a particular user is really what we're aiming for. So just continue to think about what are different activities and passions that I can use to attract my key audience. What happens when creative is not diversified? The algorithm thinks that it's the same ad and it's only going to serve it to the same audience. Okay, so you're going to be limiting the amount of people that you can reach. So the other part of that is you'll also likely see that the algorithm will only, and the ad platform will only choose one of those ads and put all the funds behind it. So then you start to lose at auction. You see rising costs. So it's really important to have this diversification. And you may be saying to yourself, Chelsea, this is a whole lot of work, but how am I going to make this most efficient for my business? And that's where we know that we've seen rapidly evolving tools to bring an image in your mind to life. Here, I had used Midjourney just as an example of I wanted a rubber ducky who was the size of a pirate ship going into a storm on the seas. And when I started, it was very rudimentary, but as I started to become more specific and train the AI in what I wanted, that's when I could really start to see it develop exactly what I was looking for. So just think about the potential ways you can use these different tools for your products and services. Meta has their own generative AI, actually called Gen AI, and that has different tools built into it where you can do image generation, simply using a prompt. You can do text generation where it's going to give you, based on the image that you provide or have it created, will give you dynamic copy relevant to that. And lastly is text overlay and image expansion as two different ways in which we can add different features onto your image. TikTok's got a similar thing called Symphony Creative Studio. This clip in particular is really interesting where you can provide them the link to your product and then it will create for you a description, and you can also tell it your ideal audience. It can give you clips and text and combine those for easy, simple production. And an exciting new feature coming both from Meta and TikTok for generative AI is the ability to use translations in video. So they are looking not just at translating closed captioning, but also being able to move the mouth of the person featured in order to match the translated word. What this is going to do is really unleash the ability to have a more global reach and not require you to use a different video per language simply because that's the video you had to shoot. So I'm really excited about this feature for expanded reach. But the one thing that I've got to tell you is just be very careful as we go into generative AI, particularly if you're in a highly regulated space like healthcare. These types of auto applications often go against a lot of the requirements that we face with legal approvals, particularly tied to just ensuring that you have brand safety. So I do recommend test it, check it out, but get approval and make sure that you're just using those conservatively to ensure that you're getting, excuse me, that that no one's going to come knocking on your door. But what if you can't get ads made fast enough? Well, what we have seen is that you'll likely experience some ad fatigue. This is a chart where we had our clients' conversion rate recorded over 6 months. Can you tell where the creative was updated? You're right. It's at those two spikes. When we see that creative isn't supplied often enough, conversion rates start to decline. And when we add creative back in, conversion rate improves. So we did just finish up a case study where we've found through rigorous testing that about a 2 to 3 week rotation schedule is an ideal state. There is also a feature for those of you who have businesses that have a meta rep. And for those of you who don't have a meta rep, I'm so sorry, my condolences. But for those of you that do, I say that because this is a very, very valuable feature that you can have access to, but you have to ask for it. So these are called ad fatigue reports. And what they do is they are able to assess from your campaign, your ad group, all the way down to your ad, where you rank in low, medium, and high fatigue. It also shows you how much time, how much money you've spent in those different buckets. It also tells you what is the average number of days your creative is taking to get into a medium fatigue, into a high fatigue. So that also will help inform you how long your ad rotation should last. So for those of you, again, who do have a meta rep, I highly encourage you to reach out and ask for this. And I know I'm saying make changes, make them quick, but I say that with a major caveat. Action in Ads Manager means inaction in auction. And I'll say that again. Action in Ads Manager means inaction in auction, okay? Anytime you make a change that is significant enough, you get the learning phase. So we just want to make sure that you batch all your changes together, okay? Do as many as you can at one time. And that's not just for creative, that's talking about say you restructure or you change your audience or your budget. Try and do all of those at one time. The other recommendation is since the auction resets at midnight for the time zone of your particular account, try and make those changes as close to the end of the day as possible. Obviously, don't go sign on at 11:30 at night, but there are rules feature that you can use to help with some of those scheduling things. All right. So looking forward, what trend should I plan for? Well, there are two major ones. One we've already covered, which is artificial intelligence. There are two big focuses over the next 20 years for ad platforms, and that's AI, but also young adults, okay? Meta in particular released that they are focusing on appealing to young adults because they are seeing the highest volume in young adults in the highest in 3 years. We're currently at 40 million young adult users on just Facebook alone from US and Canada. And so they're only seeing this trajectory increase. We know also that those who are between 14 and 22 are comfortably consuming about 9 hours of digital media a day. They are digital natives. So these are some of the top products that they're in right now: Marketplace, Reels, Groups, Facebook dating. So it's important to make sure that when possible, you're in those placements. And let's talk about those young adults, particularly related to healthcare. I'm gonna throw some stats at you, but they're all pretty impactful. So we've got 87% of teens and young adults are using the internet to search for health-related information. So it's really highlighting the importance of getting information that's accessible and helpful to add to your page. Almost 40% of young people engage with communities that have similar health issues. So they're having these conversations, they're engaged, they're trying to learn about what other people are experiencing. In a study, 1 in 5 young adults connected with a healthcare provider through online messaging and telehealth. So this is just emphasizing that there may be instances in which providers do get more active in that space, depending on your vertical. And many young adults, about 61, report that they're watching health stories shared by others through platforms like YouTube and TED Talks. And about 15% of them are willing to share their own story. And separate from that, but consider this helpful stat that nearly half of those in the Gen Z generation prefer ads that are funny. So I know healthcare can be a little stiff, so find ways in which you can be entertaining as you're starting to diversify your creative. Okay. Young adults love what we call lo-fi content. This is user-generated content. Lo-fi simply means unpolished. It is mobile shot. It features real people. It's raw footage. It feels authentic and organic. You know, it started with content creators that turned into paid partnerships and influencers, and now is really like a pivotal part of your media mix. Meta even did a study a couple years back and found that 84% likelihood of, there was an 84% likelihood that self-recorded mobile shot creative will outperform a studio shot creative in driving content views. If you're looking at conversions, 63% likelihood over studio shot. So really looking at how can you be more organic with your content. And if you're having a hard time finding a content creator, there are actually features on the rise to help businesses with this. They're called creator marketplaces. Both Meta and TikTok have them available, and they are recommendations specific to your vertical that seem to be a good fit that you can reach out to them and see if it would be a good partnership fit to help with generating that type of content. All right. So let's talk about the future of creative in digital advertising. It is going to be a lot more personal. Ads will be tailored to users in real time with AI driving relevant, personalized content. Creative teams and media teams combine together with their strategies. We can't have different silos now because we have to use the creative in order to drive the strategy forward. So building a unified front is really important for organizations. As we mentioned, user-generated content on the rise. Do it. And another trend coming up is interactive ads. So ads that are dynamic and immersive, use different augmented or virtual realities, are enhancing different user engagements. Currently, those are not in the healthcare space, but potentially one day. All right, so let me give a little recap. Today, we learned that AI drives optimization decisions that require diverse creative. So we talked about how to understand the digital landscape evolution and what's prioritized in the auction. We also talked about how to use AI as a tool to make some efficiencies in your creative builds. These are really fun to start to learn and get into, but our biggest recommendation here is test it, train the model, and test it again. Continue to reiterate off of that AI. And the last thing we covered is to be informative and caring and authentic in your ads. Regardless of the age, consumers really just want to trust in the products and services that you offer. And so using your lo-fi content is a great way to do that. So let's talk about an action plan. Leaving today, here are the 5 things that you should do. First thing, take a 6-month look back at your click-through rate and conversion rate. Are you seeing any declines? Are you seeing any spikes? Are those spikes connected to when you uploaded creative? Just get an understanding of your performance trends. Reach out to your meta rep if you have one, again, asking for that creative fatigue report. That's really going to help you understand how frequently you need to be updating your ads. This is a big one. Talk to your boss. This is a huge shift in dynamics. And so really thinking and informing those who are decision makers in your organization that this is a shift in digital marketing and they need to prioritize creative strategy development. Okay. Going back to the drawing board, identify all possible personas and messages that you could combine. This is going to help you really gauge your ad variation to maximize audience reach. Think about who do you want to reach? What do you want to say to them? and understand different AI opportunities. Try different AI tools that help with audience understanding, copywriting, image, video, music generation. And again, just continue to train on that and see if something works for you. All right. Well, I hope that that was a plethora of helpful information. And with that, we are going to move into our Q&A session as part of this.
That's great. Thank you, Chelsea. It was
Thank you.
very good. So if anyone does have any questions that they'd like to ask, you can do as others have and add your questions to the Q&A section. We have a number of them already submitted. So first, Chelsea, you suggested that new creative should be added every 2 to 3 weeks. Does that truly mean a new creative concept every 2 to 3 weeks?
It does not. That is a great question. So the way that we've been approaching it is we like to keep an average of 4 to 5 ads in an ad group at a time. And what we like to do is have, let's say, 4 different creative concepts, but we're only running one of the images or videos from each concept at a time. And that's what's creating that nice blend.
Okay, that's great. And then a related question, how quickly are we seeing platforms identify winning creative concepts when new creative is introduced?
We like to recommend a testing period of about 3 weeks. We try not to go shorter than 2 weeks when we're doing our creative testing. In particular, we find that when we are not having a really diverse rotation, that one ad in particular becomes, I say this so loosely, the winning ad, and that it picks a winner and puts all the money towards it. But then at the end of the rotation, you see, well, I don't understand why it put all that money behind it because it didn't actually have a better conversion rate or a cost per acquisition as some. So it's a bit of a quagmire on like how long it's determining to be a winner. We like to recommend keep it diverse so that you can see and even spend across your ads and allowing that to run for several weeks and determining the winner yourself.
Okay, so a follow-up sort of for me, we're hoping to clarify that last question. When we do have significant creative diversity and run for 2 to 3 weeks, contrast that with that situation you just described where the creative sort of all looks the same and there's a shift in one direction or another that isn't really clarifying. What do we see when we do have the right level of creative diversity?
Great question. We see click-through rate and conversion rate improve. Particularly, you're getting more traffic to your site by engaging with a variety of users. You're seeing overall just post engagement improve, which helps the algorithm say, oh, people are interested in this. Let me continue to share it. And with that, then hopefully if you have a nice user experience on your site will then turn into an improved conversion rate and cost per acquisition as well. Particularly in the ad platform, click-through rate and conversion rate is going to be the big distinguishing metric between a diversified portfolio and a non-diversified portfolio.
Okay, that's great. I think, maybe one of the most important questions and something everyone would be curious about is, pre-2019, we had all sorts of granular ways that we could target audiences, and we had a lot of control. In this current period, we need to use creative diversification to target new audiences and to drive performance. Are we seeing the same performance now that we saw pre-2019? Is performance better? Is performance worse? What has changed?
Sure. I would say, truth be told, Aaron, it's a little too early to say. We have seen just in the last year as these models have improved, that our performance has improved, which is why we continue to expand into Performance Max, Advantage Plus campaigns, etc. But those products are also still in beta in a lot of scenarios. And so where I would say, no, it is definitely not anywhere near the efficiency that we saw when we were able to target specific, like health specific, condition specific audiences, particularly for healthcare marketers. But we are seeing that there is improvement to overall metrics in the ad platforms just from a year ago when they rolled these products out that are more AI based.
Okay, thank you. Here's maybe a tricky question to answer. Is it harder, in your opinion, to market aesthetic services or more typical, described here as regular healthcare services?
That is a tricky question. I feel with aesthetic in particular, there are policies in place that you have to be really careful about. And those policies are around personal, personally identifiable parts of your ad. So you, for example, if you were doing Botox, you can't do it before and after. If you're a weight loss supplement or a cool sculpting belt, like you can't do before and afters, which is such an important part of a lot of the, like, if we're talking about aesthetic from like a cosmetic aesthetic kind of situation, is I think what we're talking about. That would be, I think, the biggest barrier compared to others. But each vertical within healthcare has their own hurdles. So I can't say one over the other in particular.
Yeah. Question here. So given the limitations on targeting and given this approach to using creative for optimization, how would you recommend targeting senior home care?
Oh, sure. Senior home care, who's making those decisions? It is the children, what do we call those? Adult caregivers. It's the children of those in senior facilities. And so we would take the same approach of broad targeting, because the ad platforms are saying, cast this wide net, we'll find that person for you. So when it comes to the creative, thinking about who you're connecting to, it's not going to be Grandma June. It's going to be her daughter or her son who is making those decisions on what's best for mom. So finding emotional connectors to the audience or the adult caretaker is going to be key there. So I would focus on if you're a senior community, what are different things that you offer for engagement, meals, field trips, et cetera.
And then our experience is that with the right creative, the right message, and then the right engagement that is driven by that creative, the platform's algorithmically tuned to the audience that you're trying to reach.
Yep. So that's what the AI model is doing. It is assessing so many different data points in that lattice work, as they call it, in order to determine who of the users is going to have the highest expected conversion rate. And so that may be someone who's engaged with a different, maybe they checked out a community or a senior living facility they're checking out their social pages, for example. They have back end ways of determining the best audience fit. So really it's taking the control away from the advertiser and giving full trust into AI.
But as I know you've stressed, as I've talked with you about this over the last year, doing this as a really consistent and routine approach, not testing for 2 to 3 weeks and then sort of letting it run. You have to continuously test.
Right. And that was such an important part of why we wanted to bring this session, is like we are doing a full shift on how we're approaching creative. This is not throw it out there like spaghetti at the wall kind of situation that a lot of advertisers were used to in the past, because we had so many different segmentations, and we just do iterative testing of creative where we'd have basically the same 4 ads and just was a little bit different in each one and run those against each other and test that for a couple weeks and find the winner and do it again. We're not in that era anymore. Now we're in cast wide net, have creative that is relevant and different, and then continue that trajectory, updating I'd say 3 weeks. 2 weeks gets a little excessive, I will say, on businesses. So I would say like stick to that 3 week period. Creative rotation schedules are really helpful for us. We keep it by color coded by the audience that we're running the ad in. And so that we test different creative against the different audiences one at a time. So I hope that kind of helps clarify, Aaron.
Great. Okay, thank you. Lots of good questions.
Keep
Do
them
you
going.
feel, yeah, do you feel ads on social networks work to connect with human resource benefit managers in home health and corporations? That's a very specific, very tricky
It is
question.
very specific. And frankly, we have tried reaching different job titles in Meta, and it's just not anywhere near the ability and specificity that we have on LinkedIn. So we do a lot of, if we're looking at any type of job title, there are some options in Meta, and we do test those out to make sure, are they worth our time? But I will say it is definitely limited on Meta compared to a more career-driven social media platform like LinkedIn.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So you talked about lo-fi advertising, more authentic advertising. In your experience, how do you go about creating lo-fi advertising that still looks professional, which is, a requirement in lots of healthcare settings?
Yeah, that is a big and important question. And it's going to be creating, similar to how businesses have their organic content calendar. You have to create a program. You have to have your concepts, your storyboards, connecting with these people, having, a talking face to face, whether you're in a screen or not, but talking to people through the concept and being very clear on your brand guidelines, what you want them to say and what you want their text that they put on there to also say. Making sure you're covering things from what are you wearing, making sure you don't have any kind of logo or any kind of endorsement on that is not specific to the company. Thinking about settings, is it appropriate? Is it like clear of clutter? So there's just a lot of guidelines that I would recommend doing more research on, like what all do I need to tell someone in order for them to execute the thing that I want them to do, to be able to maintain that brand safety.
That's great. Thank you. I'm just peeling through some of these
And I bet
others.
it would, if you asked any kind of the AI models, Chat GPT, Meta AI, that's a great use case for saying, give me a layout of how I need to convey and start user generated content. Use it as a tool and ask what it and see what it says.
I would suggest in that use case, start with a persona. Develop a persona and use the persona to train the particular AI application that you're using and ask it to respond consistent with meeting the needs of that persona.
Yes.
All right. Bear with me just a second. Another related question, you mentioned the constraint for aesthetic services related to before and after. We can no longer use before and after visuals in those situations. So if you can't use a before and after, and you're in an aesthetic area, in this particular instance, someone asking about marketing a plastic surgery practice, what other approaches might you suggest? I know I'm putting you on the spot with this one.
No, that's okay. And I will say I wonder if there has been an update to that policy, because I go back to this slide I had here where we've got CeraVe doing a very clear before and after. Really, it's the before and afters are to ensure that you're not saying, I know you look like this, but you could look like this. So I think that the before and after is more making sure that it's like clinical testimonial. But in terms of thinking about how to approach that type of vertical, really talking through how the benefits of your practice and how those are different than a different practice that someone might go to. Don't just make it about the outcome of their appearance, but also the outcome of their experience with you. That's the distinguishing factor.
I think that's great advice. Okay, how do you, maybe sort of a fundamental question here just came in. So how do you actually test advertisements? Do you rely on feedback after publishing or use AI? So maybe describe the data that we're looking at when we test advertisements.
Sure. So we like to use the ad platform as a starting point, looking again at your trends over time with your click-through rate and conversion rate, in particular, looking at how those compare against different your different creative that you have in rotation at a time. But something else that's really important is the data that you're getting, your first party data, which uses, think about your customer, your CRM, excuse me, knowing if trying to determine what the high value audience is and tying that back to your creative if you're able to. We use UTM parameters as a means of being able to track back a high value lead back to a specific creative so that we can measure not just how many clicks it's getting, because an ad can be engaging and drive traffic, but at the end of the day may not be the most relevant audience. We use that first party data to help supplement and understand if it really drove the marker for our business. So we do a lot of like Excel manipulation, downloading and looking at numbers and making charts and visuals to kind of just assess how the different things, different elements are performing.
We also have a bit of an advantage in that we have our own HIPAA compliant data warehouse. And
Yes.
so we ingest all of the data from advertising platforms. We're integrated with client CRM data as well so that we can pull that in. And we're able not only to see the data, but we have created reporting and data visualizations where we can see performance by creative type, and we can actually see the specific creative for the client. And so we're not just relying on platform data, we are relying on the intersection between platform data, first-party data, and our own analysis to see what's working.
Yeah, great clarifying point, Erin. Thank you.
Okay, hang on just one moment. Scrolling through. Got a lot of good questions, Chelsea.
All right.
There's someone asking if you could explain the 2 to 3 week ad rotation one more time. They had trouble with audio when you were explaining that.
Oh, sure. So in particular, that slide we were talking about fatigue, ad fatigue, and how ad fatigue, if you don't keep your creative frequent enough, we start to see conversion rate decline. And then when we updated creative, we saw these huge spikes in our performance. And so we just talked about, we've done a test, a very recent test, like just ended last week. So we don't have the report up yet, but what we did was a cell test, a 3-cell test in Meta Ads Manager, where we compared 3 different ad groups. One where we ran the same creative for 4 weeks. One where we we updated creative at for a full month, but updated it at the 2-week mark. And then the third cell was, again, letting it run the full month, but we were updating creative once a week. What we found is that when you do updates once a week, there is not enough time for the learning period to really get an understanding of being able to drive your highest quality conversion. We saw that there was ad fatigue when we went way too long with the 4-week update. And so when we saw that that second cell where we updated every 2 weeks, that it gave, compared to when we updated it every once a week, it gave the system more time to bring in higher quality audiences that we saw in our CRM. So that's where the recommendation I'm coming from with the 2 to 3 weeks. We're seeing 4 weeks is too long. 2 weeks feels like a lot if you're someone who's in there doing it all by yourself. So that's where the 3 weeks comes in. It's like, but keep it between that 2 and 3 week is where you're going to see your highest outcomes.
Okay, that's great. A question here, very close to home for us. how can I reach a target audience for a medical device?
That's where that's a lot of what we deal with here at Wheelhouse is finding ways of reaching users without being able to define those niche audiences. You can't even, upload a custom audience if you're in the healthcare space. So again, having to rely on that broad targeting, you have to find ways of engaging the audience through your creative by demonstrating different ways of, how are users going through their daily life with this medical device? What things has it changed about their life? So we'd like to do a mix of focusing on product and product features and claims. Claims do really well, but that doesn't go far without having a blend of that be lifestyle as well, showing the human connection of, and this looks like testimonial. That's where you get a lot of the like creator content starts to come into play, and focusing on the benefits, the life benefits of choosing that product.
That's great. Thank you. Okay. And then last question, we've talked a lot about digital advertising and suggested that advertising on social platforms in particular is particularly effective right now. Does that mean that our view is that other inbound tactics like blogging or maybe reaching out via email newsletter is now less important or influential?
Ooh, I would say we are seeing such increases in usership on social media. That one statistic I threw out that AI, or excuse me, Meta is focusing on young adults because they've seen like the last 3 years, it continues to grow. And so thinking about how audiences are kind of shifting into these social platforms and how a new generation is coming in and they're, the new buying generation, it's important to think about who your key audience is and where they are still, absolutely. But I would say that there is always a use case of having a blend of a full funnel approach. Your email marketing is really good for engaging those who are kind of in that not fully unaware, but they have some kind of understanding of their what problem they're facing and the solutions that may be out there. So you can use email to start to provide them informative content, or if they are brand aware with you already, and that's how you have their email, finding ways to re-engage them through email is still really helpful. In a similar light, blog advertising, I would say, is in a similar vein to native advertising, where I think it is still really important because, again, it's a way of using ads to inform, that is a different medium from a 1x1 square. It gives you the opportunity to put more content in there. What I would say is don't write an essay, like don't have a full word block, still work on interactive assets within that, thinking about, is there a video you could use? Are there GIFs? Is there some kind of way to engage on those more traditional digital types of mediums?
And I might just clarify because I think maybe I didn't phrase the question exactly right. I think this was a question about digital advertising on social platforms versus these other potentially non-paid channels. And I would say our approach, so we use an intent-based awareness framework to target users based on their interests, their intent, and their level of awareness wherever they are in the funnel. And we're always looking to deliver the right message in the right channel at the right time. And that means a mix of services and a mix of tactics. Organic may be absolutely the right channel at the moment of discovery for someone who is unaware. And then paid social is the next position in that funnel. And then maybe paid search is a low funnel tactic. And so a blend of all of these things is correct. We have very long-term relationships with our clients. And in nearly every instance, we're not just engaging for digital advertising. We're also providing marketing sciences, and we're providing content strategy and search strategy as well. So there isn't any one arrow in the quiver that's going to do everything for you. Okay, well, we have come to the end of our time. Thank you for the excellent questions. Thank you for attending and sticking with us. We will send a follow-up with access to the recording and to the slides. We invite you to reach out with any questions or needs that you might have after the fact. But again, thanks very much for being with us. And Chelsea, thanks very much for the informative presentation.
Thanks for having me, Aaron, and thanks everybody for showing up. Happy to have your questions.